Hi, everyone. Welcome to eLearnChat, where talk is knowledge. And today we've got Dawn Mahoney and one more person.
One more person.
One more person, KarenMoloney. Here we go. Oh, maybe here we don't go. Here we go. And hi again, everyone. I'm Rick Zanotti. And hey, Dawn, how are you today?
I'm well, and you?
I am doing well, and thanks for being here because this is not our normal time.
No.
This is a Monday afternoon at 3 p.m. Pacific. And is it 2 hours different for you?
2 hours, yep,
So
it's
it's
5:15
5:15.
in the Middle West in snowy Wisconsin.
Sounds good. And today we have a lovely person from down under.
I'm so excited.
In Sydney, Australia. And her name is KarenMoloney, and she runs the eLearning Experts. And let's say hi to Karen. Hey, Karen, how are you today?
Hi, Rick. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. So tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about what the eLearning Experts does.
Okay. Well, I am an instructional designer at heart. I have been designing for about 22 years now. Started life out on an IT help desk, and I was lucky to be around at the time where kind of everything went Windows, and they needed people who could explain all of that to the people who were suddenly having to use PCs. So I kind of got into a little bit of training and a bit of instructional design, and worked for a great company for a long time, and then contracted for a bit. And about 7 years ago, I decided to leave the corporate life and start my own business. And really what the eLearning Experts is all about is about creating really good quality learning that, fits requirements and really hits the mark, because you see so much training, and particularly e-learning out there, that just doesn't really excite people, it doesn't educate people, and it makes no difference. So what we're all about is really sort of taking the time to work with our clients and making sure that we create things that excite and engage people and actually make a difference.
Now, Karen, e-learning that doesn't excite? No, that could never be. That just
You'd
couldn't
be surprised.
That's
For those other people, not us.
Yeah.
No, not us. Not anyone that's listening to this show, because they're here because they want to learn. That's good.
Yeah, and it's funny, we've been talking about e-learning not really stimulating people, or not really being effective as it could be for a long time now. I think we've been on for about 4 years. And it's an issue, I think, with the whole industry. Part of it's budget, part of it is talent, part of it is well-meaning intentions, but they don't turn out right sometimes.
I'll admit to having created a click-through because that's what they want.
Oh, so a lot of times
And
it is.
sometimes you have no choice in that.
Right?
Yeah, that's very true. And so, Karen, today you were going to talk a little bit about project management and storyboarding, and those are very important things. Tell us a little bit, what's your approach to project management with clients that may not always want to be managed very well?
Yeah, look, for us, the project management process is something that's evolved and is ever evolving in our business. I mean, I was lucky enough to work in a business very early in my career that was very regimented and very process driven. It was actually, the company was owned and run by two ex-military guys. So you can imagine everything had a place and it was expected to be in its place. So I was lucky enough to get some of those skills very early on, which was great when I sort of went into the projects world and started running my own business. But, we find, during every project, we come up against things that we could never have foreseen, and we make sure that at the end of each project we sit down and kind of work out, okay, what could we do differently next time? How could we handle that thing differently? And what's evolved from that is a stream of processes that kind of fit together as our project management structure. And really what we have found is that to put a lot of effort in upfront with our clients is really where we get the most benefit. So it's understanding the requirements, the drivers, the individual people that we're working with. So a couple of the things that we do are get clients to complete a learning brief at the beginning of a project, where we ask them loads and loads and loads of questions about what they're trying to achieve and what they expect the outcome to be. Because I think probably one of the biggest issues with any project is where it gets off track is that nobody sets a real definite concrete expectation of what this thing is supposed to do at the end. What does that end picture look like? And for me, getting very clear on that before we start, because people are always very keen to jump in and let's get started and those graphics look great and here's the content. and we don't really know where we're going. So I think for us, it's defining that end goal and establishing a good communications procedure. And we do that through a workshop that we have with our clients at the beginning of every project. So,
and I'm assuming that the learning brief doesn't have to be an enormous, unwieldy document. It's just something to get you guys started.
Yeah. Absolutely, and it just asks a lot of questions about their requirements and who's going to be involved in what are there different streams for different roles. Could we do it that way? Does everybody need to see everything? So it just it gets the client thinking more about really what they're going to do, because a lot of the time they're just thinking about telling people something, whereas we're trying to interpret that into how they can learn.
Mm-hmm. Dawn, were you saying something?
No, I just had a little tickle in my throat, but I was thinking about how I use them with my internal clients, but often they don't follow them. I'm in the corporate structure, so so how do you get them to stick to it, or how does your conversation go back to the design brief?
I think probably for us, I think the most valuable thing that we have started doing over the last couple of years is holding this project initiation workshop where we get everybody that the project will touch, whether they are a SME, whether they're a stakeholder, whether they're going to be a tester, everybody that it will touch in some way, shape or form along the way. And we get them all in a room and we explain the process to them. We explain, what's going to happen, who's going to do what, how it's going to work. We get them to allocate roles to people. We discuss communication, so how often we communicate, who we communicate with, how they get that communication. And we also take them through the process in terms of, okay, so when we give you a deliverable, this is what's going to happen. We agree turnaround times with them, but they also get to see a project plan and understand the knock-on effect of being like a day late with a review, for example, because, we have resources allocated to projects that are not just sitting waiting for stuff to come in. They've got other work to do as well. So, from our perspective, it's not just your project that could get blown out, it's other people's projects too. So I think, for us, that initial piece of getting everybody together and getting them to completely understand the end-to-end process and the role they have to play in their accountability does help. It's not to say that it keeps them on track all the way through, but there are other things we can do for that.
Mitigate that in the moment or at the time.
Yeah, and I'm finding that more and more that for me, understanding the communication styles of those particular stakeholders is so important. I mean, we've worked last year, I had a client, and I have a client at the moment who is very highly visual. So, the amount of information we put on a storyboard, or the fact that the storyboard needs to be kind of as she's going to see it on screen or as close as possible as we can get to that is very important, because going from what we would normally have as a storyboard to her seeing it on screen, I wasn't expecting it to be like that. So it's just around managing the expectations, and I think for me, understanding the drivers and what else is going on in the stakeholder world as well, because they can often behave a certain way or put certain pressure in this project because there are other things happening in the business, or they're expected to deliver on certain things around the project that you're not necessarily aware of. So there's a bit of kind of, the people management side of things, and understanding where everybody else is coming from and what might be affecting their decisions or their behaviours is really quite key.
Well, also, one thing you mentioned is you have one user in particular who's visual. A lot of them aren't. Which is one of the most difficult parts, is getting them to try to have the imagination of what you're trying to create. And usually you don't want to spend a fortune creating a massive storyboard with all the elements there, because then they think that's the final.
Yeah.
So that's always another issue. So it's kind of interesting. How do you get that one buy-in? Some users are visual, which is great. That actually makes it a little bit easier, because they have a little bit more imagination. But a lot are totally non-visual. They read it, but they can't picture it. And as a result...
they can't picture it until you give them a live moving prototype.
Right, and then they go, I don't like that.
Yeah. I mean, the prototype is something that's built into our process. So we have a learning brief. We'll then create like a high-level plan, like in an outline in a Word document, where we just sort of show how we're going to chunk the material, what sort of format it's going to follow in terms of navigation, ideas for activities and things, and images and, visuals where we've got them or got ideas for them. So they kind of sign off on that high-level plan before we go to storyboards. So all the way through our process, we're kind of we're building, and we liken it to, like I said, like building a house essentially. So you start off with, well, I'd like a 3-bedroom house. So we get an architect in and we go, okay, so let's see what that looks like. And we draw a big plan, and then we go in and we start to build. But every step along the way, we actually get them to sign off and agree to that. And I think probably that's been for us one of the key things in terms of managing scope creep, because if we have a plan that says you're going to have 10 modules of 5 minutes each, and this is the content for those and this is the activity, when we get to storyboarding, if they change their minds, we can say, well, actually that's a change to scope now because you signed off on that outline. So we found that very useful to go back to, and because we've explained that process at the beginning, the clients are very understanding of that, and some of them kind of go, okay, well, if it's going to cost a little bit more or take a little bit longer, we actually would like that in, so they do pay for it. So that's how we kind of manage that process.
Well, that's a really good way to look at it too, because in essence, when you're building a multimedia or e-learning type application, which is usually multimedia, it is like a blueprint for building a house.
Absolutely.
And we try to tell the customer it's a blueprint. If you change your blueprint halfway through the house, your house is no longer the same. It will cost you more.
It's a change order.
Yeah, but you really try to avoid change orders, because then they think, well, we're just going through a change order thing. So there's always that balancing line of, do we do a change order? Do we warn them ahead of time? This could be a change order, but let's try to avoid that. Most customers understand if there are changes and they're the ones who change, they're good about it. It's the ones.
Yeah, and I think when we quote clients as well, we always put in an amount for contingency for change.
Sure.
And if they don't want to pay that, that's fine. Then there is no change. But I think all of this really, probably what I've learned most in the last 7 years of running my business, because I've been on projects and I've run projects, but I've not been ultimately the person that takes the flak for everything. But in running the business and being the person responsible at the end of the line, the one that has to have the difficult conversations, that it all comes down to communication and expectation. So, when people are saying to me, well, I don't like that graphic, and I try and ask them as many questions as I can to find out why not. Is it the color? Is it the shape? Is it the placement? Have you seen something else? Because usually you find with this, they have seen something somewhere and there's been an expectation set. So it's like, we ask all of that at the beginning, give us some examples of things that you like and stuff, so that when we actually present them with something, we're kind of, we're there or thereabouts, and it's usually really a bit of tweaking. So I think for us, kind of honing those processes and understanding at what points we need to communicate with the clients in what way kind of helps that sort of, by the time we actually get to developing the thing, it should be really plain sailing. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Now, have you done video development as part of your e-learning?
Yes.
Now, have you noticed videos are different, because everybody watches TV and movies, and they assume that Star Wars or whatever they've seen that cost $200 million to make is what you're going to give them for $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever it costs. And that's the most interesting one. Everybody's a critic. Everybody watches movies and goes, well, I think we should do those special effects there. Do you know how much some of those special effects cost?
I think probably a couple of years ago we did a project where we, a lot of the stuff that we've done is kind of around the talking head. We like to kind of keep things as real as possible. Mm-hmm. So using, people from the organisation with their own content. I see a lot of compliance stuff that's off the shelf, and maybe that has a place. But I always feel with things that are that important, it needs to be as real as possible for people. So they need to see their workplace, they need to see their uniforms and their people. And so, and then you can have a bit of fun with that. You can photograph it as well, rather than having video. That's probably a little bit more cost effective. But in the video, I think there was one that we did a couple of years ago where we had actors in, and we scripted scenarios. So the scenarios were real. They were given to us from case studies from the client, and we had to kind of script some things around that and get the actors to come across as real live human beings, which was interesting. But the amount of work that went into that, it's like scripting a TV show. It's a whole production. There's finding the venues to film and getting, interviewing the cast and all of that stuff. It's a real big involved project, and it was expensive. And I think that's probably what people don't get, is that I think everybody's got a video on their phone these days. I can just whack a couple of videos together and. Sometimes that can work, but I think if you're looking for something that's really going to hit the mark, it's worth doing properly.
Right.
showing them in their uniforms and all that. And just recently had a conversation again about whether we use real associates or if we use stock, because we're using mostly still images. Because there's this whole heartburn over what if that person doesn't work here anymore. Yeah. So I usually point them in the direction of stock characters.
Yeah, we did that with a client last year. We actually did, it was for airport security, so we weren't actually allowed to video in the airport, but they did give us permission to take photographs in particular areas that were controlled. And what we did there was we actually just got, because we needed a lot of people, essentially. We needed a lot of people very quickly. It was a very, very tight time on that project. But we just got them to sign a disclaimer. Everybody signed a disclaimer to say that the company was allowed to use that photograph however they liked for however long they wanted. And, if they didn't want to sign the disclaimer, we just didn't use them. So that's kind of how we got around that. But it's not always appropriate.
Just depends.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the thing with these projects is I think people don't understand is it with a bespoke project, every little piece of that project is being created from scratch. There's no kind of, we don't use templates and we don't use, pre-loved video and we don't do all that stuff. It's all being created and put together from scratch like a house.
10 fingers and 10 toes. Yep. By a human being or groups of them.
Mm-hmm.
Did you start to say something, Rick?
No, I was just giggling.
Oh, okay. Are you going to show us, I know you have some examples where you're going to show us switch to that, or is Karen, are you showing us your screen?
Oh, I can.
to you and the reviewer. So, you know, there's loads of different examples on there, but I've got a free one on my website. There's all kinds of, you just Google free e-learning storyboard and you'll find heaps. But just tweak it to what you need it to be rather than trying to make your process fit a storyboard.
I thought it had to be something really fancy years ago, and then I kept thinking I could do this in PowerPoint easier than anything else. So that's just what I've adapted to. Because
everyone's got PowerPoint, and you know, then the clients can go in and they can make their own markups and whatever they want to do.
And the other thing is Storyline saves to you can save it. You can import PowerPoint, but then you can also save it as a Word file. So you can show all those notes and everything if you put them in place. You can't do that with Captivate, but you can save things in Adobe Acrobat that way. Well, we have people in the chat room, but they aren't sending me questions. So what else would you like to tell us about project management and keeping your SMEs in line? Keeping the SMEs in line, look, and I think for us it's been that's been a massive journey because, you know, one busy SME, I mean, they're all busy, right, because they're all doing something else apart from being your SME. We involve them, and I think that project kickoff is really the big thing because we get that whole team together and we get them to sort of work out how we're all going to work together and set realistic turnaround times. I think that's probably one of the key things. It's understanding the workload of a SME and how quickly they can get things back to you, because if they're reviewing something like Storyboards, that's not something you need half an hour and a coffee with. You know, you've got to immerse yourself. Like I have a client who she books an afternoon out, gets herself a meeting room, and she plots up there and, you know, gets her head in it. So I think getting everybody involved in the beginning and understanding the impact that their delays will have on other people and the entire project is very important. But we also produce a little SME induction booklet where when it's time for them to come on board, we actually sit down with them and go through exactly what's required of them as a SME and what we're trying to achieve, because a lot of them they're the SME because they know the topic best. So they are going to want to give us as much information as they can, and they think that everything's important to have. And I think that's really one of the biggest challenges working with them, is trying to get them to just sort of tone that down a little bit and understanding, right, what are the key messages? So in this topic, what are the 3 things you really need somebody to walk away with? Because that's what we focus on in the e-learning. Do we then give them some support material or, you know, deal with the other things in some other way? So it's trying to get them to sort of condense that material to what do they really need to know, and what do they need to know now, you know, because sometimes it might not be important for everybody to know that at the point in time of doing the e-learning. It might be down the track, so it could be, you know, a job aid on the intranet or something like that. So I think, you know, setting the expectation around what their role is very important. And providing support to them as well. You know, would you like me to come and sit with you when you first review those storyboards? You know, do we need to book in an extra meeting to talk about the learning outline before you sign that off? I think just making them very comfortable early in the piece, because a lot of the time the SME has been the trainer in the organisation as well, and us coming in and automating that training into e-learning can sometimes be quite daunting for them. So this goes back to what I was saying earlier on, understanding the other things that are going on in the world of the people that you're dealing with, you know, and the things that might be stopping them from giving you everything that you need. How long is that initial meeting or the workshop do you usually book?
We usually book in a day. And I'd say it's about a sort of a 10 till 4, so we'll, you know, get some lunch in and things. But, you know, we cover everything in that, you know, so we go through, you know, their requirements, we get a structure for, you know, the actual content and everything that's to be developed, the priorities, we talk about the project management process, who does what when, how do we all communicate? I mean, some people prefer to have a phone call than an email. That's fine, we can do that, you know, so let's not annoy everybody with lots of email if they would rather you just ring them once a week with a progress update, you know. So but usually a day is enough depending on the size of the project, but yeah, it usually covers it.
Do you use Microsoft Project, and you said you show them the actual project documents so they can see the dependencies?
Yeah, we don't use Project anymore. We have worked on projects where they've used it, but we just find that, you know, some clients, they either don't have it or they don't really know how to use it. And we've actually just found that the administration of it, when you have so many users, just has become a nightmare, because one person will change something and the whole plan's out, you know. So we actually use more simplistic tools than that, because really what we're tracking is who's doing what when. what did they work on? So for me, it's time tracking as well, who did what, file sharing and communication. And there's loads of tools out there that do that job really well. So, I mean, for a while, we used project plans that were just Excel spreadsheets on very simple projects. We used Basecamp for quite a long time. The only thing I found with Basecamp was just the file sharing thing was kind of like that upload, download thing, which just got a bit time consuming after a while. So Dropbox is the thing that we use for our file sharing now, and some people use Google Drive as well. And we've used Smartsheet as well, which is just a bit more like, it's kind of a hybrid between Excel and Project. So you can do quite good plans in there. You can set precedence dependence, all those kind of things, and allocate tasks out. It's quite basic, but again, it sort of does the job. But I think with all of those things, we're actually looking now to integrating. Our website's a WordPress website, so we're actually looking to integrate a WordPress plugin to actually have a project management thing within our own system. And I think really the reason behind that is just so that we can own all the data. I mean, when you use, there's all these great tools, but your data's sitting on somebody else's server. And while it's secure and that's all great, if you decide to use another tool, getting that data out is not that easy. And it's not in a very friendly format that you could easily flick back into a project plan from 2 years ago to see what happened, because sometimes we have to do that. So look, and again, I think really it's just deciding, much like the storyboard, what is it that you need to be tracking on a project? Who's going to be in charge of it? Who's going to keep it updated? And how is that best going to work for you? And then you can go and hunt the tool that is going to do the job. But I mean, if you Google project management tools, you'll get loads.
There's a lot of them. And in fact, it's funny, you were naming off all the ones we've been through. I was going, been through Smartsheets. Yep, Basecamp, right? Did that one too. Project. I hate Project. And I used it a lot back in the beginning.
It's too hard.
You spend all your time
managing the project plan. It's ridiculous.
So it's useless. It's good for construction. But because
there's only one person.
Yeah, and that's all they do.
Visual person, and that is not an intuitive program.
No, it
for
isn't.
Me. I was glad they took the license away.
Now we've been using one recently. Well, we went through Project Bubble. That's a British one, which I actually liked a lot. It was pretty good. And then we're now on Asana. ASA.
Yeah, Asana was the other one I was going to mention, actually, but I haven't actually had personal experience of that. But I'm hearing it a lot.
It's not bad. It's actually free, which is actually pretty amazing. I don't know at what point you pay. I think 30 people or more. But it's not a bad project manager. It's really more of a task manager. But, in what we do, that's good.
Similar. You can track time and...
Which one?
Red Booth.
Oh, I did Red Booth too. We didn't last that long on Red Booth. It was okay. It wasn't one of my favorites. I haven't used
it. I just have heard about it.
And I think partly because some of them have phone interfaces or device interfaces that are just so unreadable. It's like, I'm sorry, I just don't want to spend all my time squinting, trying to figure out what is that? It's just completely gray, like 5% gray. I can't read on a phone.
Well, I know that I've talked to several people recently, I would say more than 5, who in their organizations, they have adopted Google and Google Docs and all of that as their internal process.
And Google Docs works pretty well depending on what you're doing. We use Dropbox. Yes. We've tried Google Drive, and we've run into nothing but problems with Google Drive. It doesn't sync.
I find it it's a bit clunky.
Yeah, we find it doesn't sync well all the time. So as a result, we got off Google Drive. I think we're on it, but partially. We really use Dropbox the most. I got a great call the other day, and you guys will get a kick out of this, but I think it was Cisco. They're offering cloud storage, and it was something like $100 a month for, I think it was like 10 gigs, and I went, really?
What?
That's it, huh?
Who's paying for that?
I don't know. Nobody. And we're going, really? Sorry, I've got 100 gigs on my Google Drive for free, and I've got over 100 on Dropbox just by using it a lot. I keep getting more. I said,
that's what I keep
and you want me to spend $100 for really? And they go, yeah. It's like, okay.
Thanks for your
well, thanks
time.
for the call. Appreciate it. Look for another job quickly because you're not going to have a lot of sales with that.
I mean, you can store so much on your cell phone anymore. That's just
crazy.
True. I have more storage on my personal cell phone than that. I can do everything with it for $100 a month.
A year, actually, a year probably.
Yeah, exactly. It's a crazy, crazy, crazy thing. Well, what tips can you give us? Do you have any like quick your top 10 or something like that for SMEs and project management for our viewers?
Yeah, look, I think it's really just communicate, which sounds really simple, but I think for us it's just been when we've had issues with clients, and being, the one that ultimately manages all of the projects. I've got a great team of people that I work with. They're all very experienced designers, and they've done all kinds of jobs over the years. But every week there is something where somebody rings me and says, "Oh, I'm just struggling with this particular person." And when we talk it through, it is just a communication issue. It's either a question that we need to ask, or an expectation that we need to set. And it's asking as many of those questions up front as you can to sort of preempt some of the issues. And I think for us, this is what came about in this project kickoff workshop. It was all of the things that we just sort of go ahead and do, because we run projects. So yeah, we put the project plan in place and we kick off and we tell people the dates and stuff, and then things weren't happening. So it's all those lessons learned, and it's okay. So what things can we do at what point in time to minimize the impact? But it's asking the questions. The regular communication. I mean, we have on all of our projects, we have progress calls that we invite the key personnel to every week. Anybody can jump into a call if they want to. We record them all, and sometimes they last maybe 10 minutes, but it's just an opportunity for everybody to get together, say what's going on in their world, ask any questions, and move on. And because people know they generally don't last long, they're more inclined to come. If we were to set a 1-hour project update meeting every week, I doubt whether we would get the input. So I think it's understanding the people, communicating well with them, and being flexible and understanding that obviously not every project is the same, and being flexible where you can, but I think being assertive. So and having that project management process, we've got a very clear process that we take clients through, and we're very clear when we say, when you sign off on that, that's it. And then we move to the next phase. And if there's any changes between that bit and that bit, you pay more and it takes longer. And I think the biggest issue with for a lot of people when managing clients, it's okay for me because I run the business and I run the projects, and I can say, well, sorry, we can't do that for you, or this is what we can do for you. That's something else as well, is don't always say no. Say, no, I can't do that, but I can do this. But I think it's understanding that even within an organization, you need to run the project like you are the provider and they are the client. Because I think lots of lines get crossed when you're running a project internally. And I think to get, for an e-learning project team to get a very clear process and deal with each project as a project for a client, and communicate with them in the way that I've talked about, will really, really help, because it's the guys who run the internal projects. When I go and do courses with them on, this is how to run these projects, they just go, oh, the business won't buy that. So, well, the business don't buy it because nobody enforces it. If you say this is now how it's going to be when you run an e-learning project, then it does happen. It can take a little bit of time. It's culture change. It's all those things. But really, it's communication. It's process. It's asking the questions and understanding that you're dealing with people. And there's other things going on in their world than the e-learning project that we're all working on.
And before we wrap up, here's another one for you. How do you deal with the creatives, those graphic artists, those animators, those who have a whole different way of looking at life? Are you? Okay.
Just made it my life's mission to try and, manage myself better. Look, again, it's understanding those people and understanding what do they need. So I think probably, and again, being a creative person, I mean, something I find my job quite difficult sometimes because I have to do a lot of the things that I'm not necessarily good at or enjoy in running a business. I really want to sit here all day and just think up fabulous things to do with e-learning. Which I have, if I don't do this, nobody else will. But I think for me, again, it's setting the expectation, getting them to understand their accountability. So, I really need you to adhere to these deadlines, but asking them for input rather than saying, well, you got 3 days to come up with that thing. Say, okay, how long realistically do you need for that? And getting their input. And I think that's quite a lot of the time we set an expectation that's unrealistic. They try and achieve it, but it generally doesn't work. So again, it's having very, very clear and structured instructions for them as to what you expect and when you expect it. But those are created in conjunction with them. I mean, I find that it's the graphic designers that I have the most problem with, and I think a lot of the time that's just them understanding the requirements. Because ultimately, somebody says, "I would like a house." It's their interpretation of what that house looks like, and that's their creative and everything that in their environment that affects that. So we need to be as clear as we can. We need to say, okay, I need that house to have 5 bedrooms and a swimming pool, and 3 bedrooms of this size and 2 bedrooms of that size. And here's an example of another house that I like that will help you, and give you some ideas, and but maybe scheduling some additional meetings, for them to ask questions and come back with, ideas and prototypes and that kind of thing. I think they're the most difficult. I think the kind of creatives like the voiceover people and stuff, I don't really have much of a problem with them. I might just be lucky we've got some very good people
they're
that we
actually easy
with,
to work. Those are actually easier to work with. The VO people, the video and VO people tend to be a little bit easier.
Rick, what question were you really
people
asking?
Are quite good. I mean, I think we just need to give them very clear instructions, and we work with them a lot on intonation and the kind of accents that are required. We tell them about pronunciation. We, rather than getting the thing back and it being, slightly wrong when they're using technical terms and stuff. And again, video people. Yes, if you're going to video these people for 3 hours, we need you to leave pauses at this point, and this point, so that we can edit that video properly and those kind of things. So all of these things that we've talked about today, it's all communication, asking questions and setting expectation, but working with people as a team and getting their input is key.
Sounds great.
Adapting your communication style to the roles they play.
Absolutely.
And asking more questions maybe instead of directing.
Karen, as we wrap up, where can people get a hold of you?
Yeah.
Just on the website, so it's www.theelearningexperts.com.au. There's contact forms on there, and there's online stores and all those kind of things. Tells you about everything that we do. Essentially what we do, we just help people do e-learning, really. So if anyone wants to contact, probably through the website is the easiest. I'll get all of those requests that come through on that contact form.
Sounds great. Well, we wish you luck in what you're doing. You sound like you're doing a great job. And
thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity to come on today. I was very excited about it. I'm glad we managed to find a time. So sorry it's a bit later than usual, everybody. It was a bit early in the morning when you're normally online. So I really appreciate you giving me that opportunity.
It's
thank
fine.
you.
And like I said, I have a good friend, Jeff Blanchard, in Australia, and we do a show on Fridays. Same thing, 3 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. his time right now.
Yeah, 10's good.
Because it's hard to really coordinate times between the we have a day and a half of difference almost, so it's crazy. Tricky, but we make it work. It's not that hard. And
you do what you do. I was just glad I happened to read my email last night, so I knew about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and she showed up, which is good. She's not on the road this week.
It's a holiday week for us, so I'm home.
That's true.
Well, I was looking forward to it too, and I thank you so much. Those are really good pieces of information, and often the things that make us scratch our heads. So I'll be reviewing this often.
Look, I'm still scratching, but I'm just sharing what I find out along the way.
If you can take the pain out of one situation, it's totally worth it, right?
Exactly.
Well, for all you guys in the chat room, thanks for being there. And if you're watching the recording on Vimeo, please subscribe, give us your feedback. We will also have in the show notes Karen's URL and contact information, which is on her website. So again, Karen, thanks a lot for being here today. We really appreciate it. Especially, I get the feeling you're on your day off today too, right?
No, I just decided to work from home. It's a bit quieter than my office.
Okay.
I couldn't guarantee nobody would walk in.
That is true. Yeah, when my door's closed, people just go, "Hey, what's going on?" Oh, jeez.
Yeah, something cool must be going on in there.
Yeah.
On air. You need an on air sign.
I know. We actually we had one at one point. I don't know what happened to it. But
you moved.
Yeah, we moved. And that's probably part of it. Well, anyway, Karen, again, appreciate it. Dawn, as always, we'll see you. Actually, Dawn, I'll see you on Wednesday.
Yep, we got another show this week.
We have another show this week. Two eLearnChats this week. So there's lots of e-learning and chatting to go around. And Karen, again, thanks for being there. Hold on a second until we get rid of the outro here, and then we will be back live. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.